Hello and welcome to the Sunday Guardian podcast by Joyeeta Basu. As you know, Donald Trump is now the President of the United States. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has just returned from his visit to the US. A lot is happening at a time when it seems there is a change in the geopolitical order. I have a very special guest to discuss what is going on in the world, what is going on in India US relations in the context of Prime Minister Modi's visit. Ambassador Suresh Goel, who is a retired ambassador and as well as secretary from the Ministry of External Affairs. He is also former Director General of ICCR. At present, he is part of several think tanks, including the Global Counterterrorism Council. Thank you, Ambassador, for being on this show.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Joyeeta, for inviting me. Lovely to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Now, Ambassador, tell me, how do you think the international order is changing now that Donald Trump is president of the US?
You see, even before Donald Trump became the president, the events in Ukraine, Europe, events in Middle East, the way China was becoming more assertive in their own region, there were clear indications that the power structure or the power equations in the world were going through a change. Trump, after becoming the Trump, has really uh, just completely hastened up the process by rather radical ideas, by the behavior of the USA or by his own behavior. I think I recall the word somebody used as an imperial or as a monarch of all that he surveys. So essentially, his own view of world is completely different from what we have seen so far in the accepted world order where you have right, left, liberals, you have democracies, but nobody so far said that I will get what I want, and this is what I want. So there seems to be a hint of kind of uh, uh, I think power there that and therefore when he says that make America great again, it is not simply make America great again as America, but obviously what he is thinking of is that America or the USA should be the power once again which guides the destiny of the universe. Under the circumstances, you see the solutions he is offering, the in terms of what he says, Gaza, that America as a neutral power should be allowed to take over Gaza and build on it because he thinks that's the only guaranteed solution for Gaza. Ukraine, the kind of solutions he has in mind. I could never even imagine earlier that you could talk about Ukraine without involving Europe or Ukraine, but he's doing it. And you see, when he says those things, people were earlier actually wondering whether he is right or whether he has gone off, if I can use the word, gone off his bonkers. But now people are taking him seriously. And that's what I mean. That the whole world is thinking, rethinking of how to deal with the issues rather than in the conventional manner.
No, at the same time, doesn't it seem like that, actual solutions are also emerging? Who would have thought that a time would come when the US and the Russia would be sitting inside the same room while the Europe would be standing outside and sulking?
You're quite right about this, really. In fact, we were not that unconventional. And therefore, we can't imagine that they are the right solutions. But when you look at them, uh, you may not like them, but probably they will work. Now, for example, in the case of Gaza, now I have dealt with the issue of Gaza in the United Nations from 1991 to 95 when I was member of the fourth committee dealing with these issues, Palestinian issues. At that time, it was a sacrosanct thing that Palestine has to be a sovereign territory with its own borders, with its own state. Here he comes, Trump, and he says, I want to build the Middle Eastern Riviera on Gaza, and the Gazans can go somewhere else. Now, when you think of it really, even the Gazans must be wondering whether they are living in the right place because they are suffering those bomb attacks, aggressions anytime. So maybe they'll be happier going somewhere else. The question is where. But if you look at it, it doesn't seem so weird when you think that yes, Gaza can be emptied of people and built as a tourist destination. Does it sound
It's
weird?
actually hardly anybody. I think 10, 15 million people, isn't it? Or
I,
no, one and a
I,
half million people.
I
So
think
15
20,
lakh.
20 million people.
15 lakh, 20 million, yeah. So the thing is, it's not that high a number as well when you look at India and all. So the thing is, but let's see. Now, what are the challenges do you think these changes pose for India? I mean, in terms of the whole world.
Now, that's a very interesting question, really. Again, we are used to dealing with our own issues, India in the context of the global. And let us face it that we have the ambition to become an important economic power, political power. And for that, we need economic growth, we need resources, we need investment. So we need all those things, and we need friends, we need people to listen to India in the on the international platforms. But we have always been looking at it from, again, the same accepted point of view, prevalent points of view. We have never really gone beyond that point that we said, all right, we will get political support from Trump for on this and this issue. Russia will use the veto if there is something which happens to us. So we have looked at these things in a very conventional kind of a manner. For the first time, you find Trump, and he says, we will have reciprocal duties, the tariffs. So, what do you do? I mean, even if the trade is very low, so what solution do you find after this? When you say, I'm going to build the Middle Eastern Riviera on Gaza, our whole equation with Middle East, which was built on the basis of support to Palestine, and later on in terms of the economic interaction, we
Two-state solution.
a two-state solution for Palestine suddenly goes for a six because there is no two-state anymore really if Gaza goes away. So we have to think of new ideas. China, for example, that's very important. Will be a great challenge for us because if the way we look at Trump, Trump begins to look at China not as just a political challenge, but Elon Musk has built an EV factory in a battery factory in Shanghai. He's building the factory. So if he begins to look at China not just as a political challenge, but as a possible economic competitor, but also with whom they can work, what will happen in Indo-Pacific? Think of all these possibilities. So I think India has to look at the whole issues from a new angle, and in that new angle, India will have to basically now start saying, this is what we want. This is where we want to be, rather than basically hedging and defending itself over and over again. Again, a new way of thinking.
So, how do you see India US relations evolving in the time of Donald Trump, and especially in the context of Prime Minister Modi's recent visit to the US?
Not to be taken for granted.
Okay.
I think if you look at the visit of Prime Minister Modi to USA, there are two things which actually are the most important. One, that the visit took place within the very first month of Trump becoming the president, which actually gave a way for us to see where we are going with USA and what does the future hold for us. Because any conversation, whether we have outcomes or not, at least we would see the road ahead of us. And I think the visit was really to see the roadmap ahead of us, number one. And number two, President Trump will be there for 4 years. Prime Minister Modi has 4 years ahead of him. This is the first time that one prime minister will be dealing with a full term president during his entire career. So, what he builds up today is going to be there till the end of Trump's presidency, positive, minus, whatever it is. So, that is very important. Now, I think essentially what we see the relationship going ahead, and I said challenges. Trump is looking at India primarily uh, not as tariff, etc. But those are things which he will deal with. And take it from me, he is going to keep on increasing tariff. He is going to keep on sending immigrants back to India. There's no way out of it. But will he continue to attach equal importance to India, Indo-Pacific, and Quad in the days to come? If you well, let us face it, for Trump, important thing is business, economic relations with China. If in that process he comes to accept China as the pivotal power in Indo-Pacific, it's not unthinkable. Quad, Quad is not a military group; it's a security group. And how important is Quad for Trump? So I think we our challenges are going to be in the strategic and the security areas because our bases, our those assumptions are going to be challenged hugely, and we will have to again basically find a new way of thinking of relations with USA, not just as terms of Indo-Pacific or Quad, but different. Yes.
So when you're talking about China, as you talked about, said, what are the chances of Trump suddenly striking a deal with China? He's a transactional president. What are the chances of him suddenly striking a deal with China, and in that process, India falls by the wayside? Is that why you are saying that
I
this
mean,
relationship cannot be taken for granted?
is it unthinkable? If today the only thing that is standing in that way, in the way of that, is Xi Jinping not agreeing to doing the deal with Trump. But if Xi Jinping thinks that yes, it's the right time to do a deal with Trump, and he does it, then what? And he can do it because, after all, uh, today China is an emerging power in artificial intelligence. China is able to hold the USA on the for supplies of critical minerals. China is able to build GUPs on its own, EVs, infrastructure. China has done technologically wonderfully well. And therefore, China doesn't have to be shy of dealing with USA anymore. And if if Xi Jinping thinks that yes, he can do now a deal with USA, he will do it.
What is this? It seems that there is a lot of convergence between India and US when it comes to things like defense and all.
Hmm.
So, and of course, India as the net security provider in the Indian Ocean
Hmm.
region, that what he's talking about in the Indo-Pacific. So, how important is it to this region is to Trump's scheme of things?
We have to wait and see.
Mm-hmm.
As I've already said, there are still many things which are not clear. And they're still in the realm of really exploring futuristic possibilities. And a lot really hinges on China and the USA. And as I've already said, it is not unthinkable that they might come close. If they come close, then India's role in the Indo Pacific is going to be very, very different, completely.
So, what should India be doing to maintain its preeminence in the regional strategic matrix in
Mm.
terms of whether US and in the context of US relations, of course?
Now, that is something that I think and we have many wise heads in the government and outside, they need to sit down and think about it. And I'm quite sure that our own External Affairs Minister is a wise man with gray hair and all that. He's a bright person.
So, what are your suggestions?
Yes, I'm coming to that. Okay. Um, I think we need to basically dehyphenate our foreign policy goals from the USA. I know it is very easy to ride the bandwagon, but because now that we are not certain as to what the USA's approach is going to be, dehyphenate as much as possible, build relations with France, uh, Russian Federation. We are already there. My apprehension is that if the Ukraine situation is resolved and sanctions against Russia are lifted, Russia and the USA become close again. USA and China do a deal. Look at this triangle. Where is India? So, We need to build up relations independently with Russia, with France, Germany in Europe, build up our own linkages, economic linkages. And I'm underlining the word again, economic linkages. You see, so far, I don't think that we have paid enough attention to the economic linkages globally. We have been thinking strategically, or we have been thinking in terms of the supply chains, resource material, oil, energy, etc., etc. But technology linkages, we are falling behind in technology. We can become a base for development of technology within India and supplying it to the other countries, and working with other countries for manufacturing. We have not done that so far. And we have a pool of bright young people. Technology. We can work in terms of the uh, global hubs of supply chains. I think it was a huge mistake not to go into the RCEP because of competition from China or the fears of Chinese supplies inundating the Indian market. There are ways to deal with it. But what we have not done is that we have tried to basically avoid linking with the global supply chains to protect our own domestic industries. We need to get away from that. We need to become a global partner so that ASEAN, our Act East policy, let me ask you, where is our Act East policy today?
Okay.
I don't hear about it at all. We hear about Singapore.
But we do have these summits and all in terms of all these
What
ASEAN
do where
countries.
do they go? I mean, I know the summits have taken place for the last 30 years. But what do they achieve? Indonesia. I think we need to cultivate these countries vigorously, really. Build up our own linkages, Europe, ASEAN, uh, Africa, we are all doing that. Global South was a great idea, but we need to add meat to it.
In this context, when you're talking about, I mean, basically multilateralism is the way to go. If that is the way to go, BRICS, the ultimate
Mm,
quote unquote multilateral platform where
mm,
so many countries are queuing up to
mm,
join, Mr. Trump is so angry with BRICS. And the thing is that
mm.
he keeps talking about 100% tariff and all.
Yes,
And the thing is, at the same time, you see, if he's friendly with India, if he's friendly with now Russia, and he's not very happy with South Africa, he's extremely unhappy with
yes.
South Africa, he's not happy with China as such. And Brazil also, Mr. Lula, he's not too fond of.
Mm, mm.
So, what is exactly going on here, and what is the future of BRICS in the time of Trump and when India is a part of it?
I think BRICS, Trump does look at BRICS as Chinese body, because there's somebody who says China established BRICS. China didn't establish BRICS, but anyway, whichever way he thinks, I think Trump has become angry with BRICS primarily because of South Africa. Elon Musk, who came from South Africa, who is an African, and he thinks that South Africa has become racist. Now, tell me something. After this diatribe of from Trump on South Africa, where are our statements? Have we said anything at all? There are two issues here. One is de-dollarization, and the other is South Africa. We have not spoken anything at all on either of two. De-dollarization, yes, we have said that we are not interested in de-dollarization. Fair enough. We do not want yuan to become the main currency or the preponderant currency for trade. Fair enough. But I think BRICS is important to us, not just as a BRICS trade body, but BRICS is important to us because it spans all the continents. The members are important countries from those continents, and they can become a very effective organization, more or less like G7, more or less, not completely, because they don't have that economic heft, but they can. We should build upon BRICS. It's very important, and from that point of view, I think it's useful. Remember our support to anti-apartheid movement in South Africa. We we have been known as the main champion of anti-apartheid movement, and we have not said anything at all so far.
No, but then we do not say so many things. I mean, then critics might even say that we say nothing about, how but China has been going around colonizing people, the killing democracies everywhere. We do not say anything about that. Also, why should we get
No,
involved in
no,
such
no,
things?
because we need to choose our priorities. And I think BRICS should be our priority. South Africa, both on account of BRICS and Global South, should be our priority. If we want to build our own political heft, we need to know that South Africa is important for us.
No, but then South Africa, there are so many other things involved in it, isn't it? There's the India-Israel relationship involved, India-US relationship, because South Africa was going after Netanyahu, about which, I mean, it's a jumble. So,
Mm.
doesn't it?
Joyita, I think let us not mix Israel with South Africa. Okay,
Okay.
okay. There are many more things that are going on between Israel and South Africa and what South Africa does. And South Africa, I am not saying that South Africa has been always acting fair to India. They have done things. But I think at this juncture of time, if we want to retain our political heft, South Africa is important.
Okay. So, does BRICS have a future?
It
And
does.
especially
Mhm.
when Mr. Trump is so vociferous against it, he calls them hostiles, even though it has India.
Somebody should say that the world doesn't end with Trump and start with Trump. No, I think we should, and sooner or later, because South Africa is the biggest economy in South Africa,
In
in
African
Africa,
continent, huh?
in Africa, in the whole continent, is the biggest economy. As a political power, even within Africa, it commands a great degree of influence. We all know that. SADC, you cannot even think of SADC without South Africa. Nigeria, Nigeria and South Africa have had good relations. They have competed, but they will always be together. Zimbabwe. So let us not think that we can have an Africa without South Africa.
And what about this is the last question actually. What about India's immediate neighborhood? We saw the statement mentioning Pakistan, terrorism in Pakistan. And then there is, of course, Bangladesh, where Bangladesh, in a way, Mr. Trump said that, oh, well, I leave that to. I mean, of course, that statement has been interpreted in several ways. But he basically said, well, Mr. Modi will handle that. That is what the message that came out. So, how much of a free hand are we getting against Pakistan and Bangladesh?
Again, Joyita, you have dealt with international issues for a long time. And I've read your articles, I've read you, so therefore I'm sure I don't have to say this.
This is for the
But,
viewers.
yeah,
This
so,
is for the viewers. The viewers want
no,
to
but
know.
just think of it. If China were not using our immediate neighborhood to build its own leverages, would the situation be same? I don't think so. So, when I say that we need to build up our own linkages within the region, and we need to be aware of the possibilities of USA and China doing a deal, it becomes quite obvious that we need to also think of building up our relations with China. Now, that may seem like committing suicide on a TV channel. And particularly, I'm aware of the fact that there was one gentleman who said that China is not our enemy.
Yeah.
I, I really think that we should stop looking from the prism of China as an enemy, look at China as a rival. China is a rival. China is a very, very fierce rival, aggressive in designs, assertive. But look at China as a rival and compete with China. When you compete with China, other countries will look at India as an option.
Okay. So basically, the fundamental thing that you're talking about is don't take the relationship, however quote unquote good this might be, don't take it for granted.
Don't take any relationship for granted.
Any foreign
And
relations.
any foreign relations, even your wife, if you take your wife for granted, she will give up on you. She will throw you out of the house. No, jokes apart. You cannot take any relationship for granted. You have to pay attention to it. You have to build up on the relationship. And I think that we have ignored certain relationships in the past.
Okay. Thank you, Ambassador, for being on this show.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you, viewers, for watching. Until the next time.